obviously, I got to ask you, as a Cleveland Browns fan, what was your instant reaction to Deshaun going to Cleveland?
It was all mixed emotions. I've talked about this with a bunch of people, especially personal family and friends, and people who have dealt with some kind of situation that is going with Deshaun Watson. I mean, not like Deshaun Watson personally, but the women who are in the position, because I know a couple of people who had something like this happen to them. The fan in me is just screaming. He's like, yeah, we got Deshaun Watson. We got a top 10 quarterback in the league. We're going to be good again. And then the real me is just like, oh man, we got a guy with 22 civil lawsuits on sexual misconduct, and this is not a guy I want on my team. It's very mixed emotions, but I think Mike Florio said it best from Pro Football Talk. He said this could turn out the same way as it did with Ben Roethlisberger, Kobe Bryant, all these guys, where, in those same years that they had these alleged sexual assault cases on them, those same years, those guys went to championship games. And next thing you know, after a couple of years, they just forgot about it. And everyone just kind of brushed it off to the side. And especially for the Steelers, it was all jokes like, haha, Big Ben, this and that. And now with Kobe, everyone just forgot with all the rings he's won. He said it's going to most likely become that, especially if Deshaun has a lot of success in Cleveland, where it's just kind of going to brush off to the side and nobody's going to care. But there's a lot of Browns fans who are very upset. And actually, I know a lot of people, especially just looking on Twitter, who renounced their fanship with the team and just said, I'm not supporting this team anymore.
Does it matter that these are civil lawsuits and not criminal? Because the grand jury decided not to pursue criminal charges against him.
I mean, I still think no matter what, you still have to face these, civil lawsuits one-on-one now. It's tough to tell if all 22 women are lying because an Ohio lawyer sent out a tweet discussing everything. And, he also mentioned it's very peculiar that all this happened as soon as Deshaun said he wanted out of Houston. All this stuff came out the next day or within that same week, the next couple of days afterwards. And he's like, it's weird how all these girls' they have the same lawyer and they live right next to the GM of the Houston Texans. And, he doesn't necessarily think it's a plant that Houston had, because obviously Houston had to deal with the racism of the GM, of the old GM before he passed away. And Deshaun was a part of that team.
Should clarify, not the GM, the owner.
The owner, that's right. The owner, that's right.
And even that is supposed racism, not actually like confirmed racism.
Right. So dealt with that in Houston, and that's part of the reason why he wanted out to begin with, is because he probably didn't want to be in that kind of situation. And for me personally, I think he should handle these civil lawsuits before the season begins, or at least try to, because I would rather him be clear. And I know he's going to get suspended regardless. That's probably going to be 100% confirmed, because we did sign Jacobi Perkins just in case to back him up. I wouldn't doubt that he's going to get a big suspension like Big Ben did and a few of these other guys.
But you're asking him to settle these lawsuits, but he believes he's innocent in the matter.
Right. For me, the justice system is innocent until proven guilty. That's the justice system we abide by. And we don't know if he's innocent or not. Obviously the grand jury said there was not enough evidence to pursue this further. But he's still got to handle these all personally now. It's something that should be handled. And, I hope he's innocent. There's people who've been put away for stuff like this and they were completely innocent. It's, becoming a big thing. And it's hard to tell if 22 women are at least all 22 women are lying, at least.
Well, the question I think too, morally, I guess, is if one of them is telling the truth, does it not matter that it's 22 as a whole?
Right. That one is just enough.
Either way, that's not why we're here to talk about with Deshaun. I mean, not to sound distasteful, but we are here to talk about the fantasy football ramifications. And you brought up the possibility that he may be suspended. Now, hedging on the side that he's not suspended, let's assume he plays all 17 games for the Cleveland Browns. Where would you have Deshaun Watson ranked?
I'd probably say within the top 15. He hasn't played in a year, so he's going to probably take a couple games to kind of reintroduce himself into the league. And people think, oh, well, it's Deshaun Watson. He's a great quarterback, stuff like that. But even taking a year off could really do some damage to your game a little bit, because, you're not playing game time speed. You're not throwing to your actual receivers. You're throwing on a high school field with just kind of a bunch of randos who are willing to catch for you. And you're NFL ready, obviously. You're an NFL quarterback, but you're not. You have to get yourself back up to speed. And number two, you're learning a brand new system that you didn't have in Houston. You're learning a whole system, and it's based on the running games. There's going to be opportunities where, yeah, he's going to run himself, but also too, you're running a bunch of 3 tight end sets, and you're going to have to learn just to play in that kind of role.
Yeah, but if he's like Baker Mayfield was last year, minus the interceptions, minus the dumb turnovers, then by virtue, that would, yes, assure that he's a top 15 quarterback. But if you look at the last full season that Deshaun played, he was the 7th best quarterback on a points per game basis with 23.1 fantasy points per game.
Right.
And that season, he also led the NFL in passing yards. So yes, I agree that Stefanski and them are going to be a more of a run first offense, but I don't think you trade for a guy like Deshaun Watson and then say we're going to restrict him passing.
Oh, no, I'm assuring you right now, Kevin Stefanski is going through his playbook and making some changes to where he can throw more.
But when you say top 15, that just sounds too low to me. That sounds like you're hedging on him being more Carson Wentz from last year than Deshaun Watson from 2 years ago.
I just tried to open up the floor a little bit to give him some kind of like breathing room, because eventually I wanted to put him in the top 10 because I think he can easily be a top 10 quarterback in the league. I just feel a top 15 just to kind of reintroduce himself to the NFL and be like, okay, this guy could easily just go from like 13th to easily be the top 7. And
well,
just
that's
be
fair.
Boom.
But the problem is if he gets announced tomorrow that he's not going to get suspended, he's going to play all 17 games, then you're not drafting him to be a top 15 quarterback. You're drafting him to be a top 5 quarterback.
Yeah,
no, you're drafting him to be top 5, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's where the draft value would go. Now, there's also this game here, knowing that the possibility of a suspension happens. Now, I don't think they're going to suspend him a whole year.
No.
Based on similar situations, I'm thinking back to the Ezekiel Elliott situation where also he wasn't criminally charged. He had civil stuff going on. And even his stuff kind of got waived off, but the NFL still made the executive decision to suspend him 6 games. I'm thinking anywhere from 6 to 8 games. You also factor in Antonio Brown's suspension from a couple years ago as well. I think that those are comparable situations that the NFL might look at for suspending him. And let's split the difference. Let's say he suspended 7 games. What do you think is an appropriate round to grab Deshaun Watson?
For me, he's still going to, like you say, he's still going to be an excellent quarterback and stuff like that. So you can still, for me, grab him early. I would say within the top 5 because
top 5 though. I mean, but you are still losing him for 7 weeks. So if you draft him top 5, don't you also have to draft Kirk Cousins type or?
I mean, like top 5 rounds.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like top 5 rounds is still pretty early for a quarterback, especially with the idea of waiting on quarterbacks. I mean, Patrick Mahomes might not go till the 3rd round. Kyler Murray might not go till the 3rd round. Deshaun Watson, you're drafting him in the 5th round, knowing that he's gone for 7 games.
Knowing he's gone, I'd still draft him pretty high just for the fact that, he's going to be one of those quarterbacks that can make a great impact. So, because if you don't draft him, someone else will. I mean, that's just how fantasy football works is sometimes you could say like, oh, well, he's dropping a couple. I could keep waiting. And then next thing you know, he's just snatched the next pick. That's why I'm saying kind of like top 5 to at least 7 at least. So that way, it's like you can get him, but, you don't have to worry about someone just snatching him right underneath you. And
well, we know that if he's gone for 7 games, obviously you're not going to have a starting quarterback for 7 games. So that means we have to draft a backup. Who are some quarterbacks that you would kind of try and pair with him? Obviously we don't know the schedule this far out, so we can't like compare matchups, but some guys in the later rounds that you might target if you were someone that drafted Deshaun Watson a little earlier in hopes of just locking him down for playoffs.
Well, you can still kind of go down the route of like a Jacobi Perkins because if Deshaun can't play, he's a good back and you could get him later on.
Yeah, but Jacoby's never going to move the needle for you in fantasy. At best, you're hoping for 15 points. That's probably Jacobi Brissett's upside. Wouldn't you rather go with someone like even a Tua?
Oh, yeah, easily Tua, because he's going to be my next mention was Tua. But the reason why I bring up Jacobi Brissett is because he has that similar running style kind of play.
But he's never been good in fantasy.
Never been good at fantasy. But I think this Kevin Stefanski offense can help elevate that just a little bit.
I think it would double down on his conservatism. Obviously, it's a run-first offense. So what is Jacobi Brissett throwing? Like 15 times a game at best if he's put in a situation he has to start. Can you really get fantasy points off 15 pass attempts?
I mean, you can get fantasy points knowing that, if he's within the 5-yard line, he could easily just run in and score. But
even in the full year he played when Andrew Luck decided to retire last minute, what do you get? Like 5 rushing scores? Is that going to be good enough to elevate you for 7 weeks?
For 7 weeks, you can make do, but like you said, I would stick to more of like a Tua kind of guy.
Yeah, I think there's guys in the second tier that you could probably get. I would mention like someone out the gate, like a Kirk Cousins first, or a Tua first, or you could go the Carson Wentz route. Yeah. You can see if maybe one of the rookies from last year, like a Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence, very early on could become better. A Trey Lance, take that route. If Jimmy's still the starter, take that route. I would shoot more for that than just settling on Jacobi Brissett, who at best is going to be quarterback 24, 25. Are you even ranking Jacobi Brissett, if you're being honest, Drew?
I'm going to wait for the suspension, maybe, depending on to where I'm going to put Jacoby Brissett. But if Jacoby Brissett, is day one starter, I'd probably put him within that 24-25 range.
And that's not what I'm drafting the guy for. I'd rather take a shot on Jameis Winston coming off an ACL tear than Jacoby Brissett, just because at least I just know Jameis has been good for fantasy in the past as opposed to Jacoby. There's a lot of guys I would probably mention before Brissett.
Now, let me throw this to you. What about a Baker Mayfield if he does get traded to like a Seattle or to like an Indy?
To a Seattle, I'm just taking the chance on Seattle being really bad and him having to pass a ton because they're going to be playing catch up in the majority of their games. But even then, I don't like that because Seattle's offensive line is going to be a little bit beat up. We saw Cleveland struggle a little bit, Baker Mayfield struggle when the offensive line had injuries last year. So do I want to take the risk of an undersized quarterback who suffered from injuries last year, a torn lat, with a bad offensive line? And if they trade like Tyler Lockett before the draft, maybe just DK Metcalf and Noah Fant to throw to, I kind of don't like that. And I think now that Russell Wilson is gone, Pete Carroll is going to be more run first heading into next year as well. If he goes to the Colts, okay, but I think that offense is again going to run through Jonathan Taylor. So even on the best case situations for Baker Mayfield, I think he's maybe in that quarterback 16 to 20 range, which I guess can get you by again if you're just trying to make it work. But I would only start him in great matchups. I would only be comfortable doing it in fantastic matchups, which again, obviously early here in the offseason, so we don't know what the schedule is going to look like. I just don't feel confident in Baker Mayfield being my week one starter in fantasy football. That's why, as bold as you are to say, I'm going to go and grab Deshaun in the 5th round, I'm going to wait until like round 8, round 9. If I miss on him, I miss on him, but that's more adequate value to me. That's with a suspension. I think that's more adequate value. And maybe I pair him with a guy that's not quite a quarterback 1, but somewhere on that quarterback 2 to 1 range any given week. That could be like a Matt Ryan even, and Matt Ryan gets put in the right situation. I think that those guys, at least their passing opportunities are more there. We'll see what Doug Peterson brings to Jacksonville if Trevor Lawrence is going to be a little bit more opened up. A guy like Justin Fields, I would love to pair Deshaun Watson with Justin Fields if I'm stacking these quarterbacks, because I think Justin Fields is going to have a phenomenal sophomore year. Again, you mentioned a guy like Trey Lance. Those are probably guys I would target if I was a Deshaun Watson draftee or a Deshaun Watson owner heading into next season.